I lost over 125 pounds using 3 cardio strategies that are backed by science and that most people are ignoring. You see, when most people start doing cardio, they either go too hard, they get burnt out, and then they end up quitting because they don't know how to start and build consistency. They think that it's either all or nothing. They think that they gotta go 6-7 days a week, they gotta do an hour of cardio every day, and that if they don't do that, then they're a failure and they end up quitting. But what if you were able to start smaller? What if you were able to build some wins? I'm gonna talk about 3 strategies that are gonna help you finally overcome that initial stage so that you can use cardio as effectively as possible and based on what science says works, so that you can have the most benefit in terms of fat loss and in terms of not only losing the weight, but keeping it off for a lifetime. If you stick around till the end, I'm gonna give you 2 tips that you can stack onto these strategies that helped me not only lose over 125 pounds, but also keep it off for over 20 years now. So stick around till the end where I can give you those 2 tips that you're gonna be able to stack onto these 3 strategies. We're gonna go through a lot of science today. We're not gonna get into the weeds, but I do think it's important that I mention some science because after all, if science doesn't say it works, then I'm not gonna talk about it and it's not worth mentioning. So I'm gonna bring up some scientific studies, and I want you to realize that the reason why I'm bringing these up is to make you realize that these strategies work. It's not just me telling you that they worked for me, because everyone is a little different, but these strategies work because they've been tested on multiple people, hundreds of people, and they've shown that these 3 strategies really work to get you not only fat loss with cardio, but to keep it off over the long term. Before we even get into that, I want to mention one study, and I'm going to look at some notes here so I can be a little more accurate on this. So there's a 2014 Cochrane review, which was a meta-analysis of 54 studies. Essentially what that means is they got 54 different studies and they looked at all of the different information in those 54 studies, and they came up with as best of a conclusion as they could based on all of the information in all 54 studies. And basically what they said is this massive review found that regular cardio is one of the most effective ways to sustain weight loss long term. But the key is doing it right. So a lot of people do cardio, but why is it that they don't end up getting fat loss? Or if they do get fat loss, they don't end up keeping the weight off and sticking to the plan long term. That's what we're really gonna get into today and what I want you to really focus on. Nothing that we talk about here is a 1 or a 2 week plan or a 4-week plan or a 12-week plan. This is for a lifetime. And that's how you lose the weight and keep it off. So this Cochrane review basically analyzed over 4,000 participants. And this leads us to our first strategy, which is start small and start slow, okay? So don't jump into the deep end and think you're gonna do X amount, 5-6 days a week, an hour or 2 hours every day of cardio if you're starting off with 0, right? Start small and start slow. And what this study found is 4,000 participants, and they found that those who started with manageable cardio routines, what that means is walking 15 minutes a day, for example, they were 3 times more likely to stick with it long term versus those who jumped into a really intense program. So you're looking at over 4,000 people, and they said, wow, the people that start off really slow and they start off with maybe 15 minutes of walking every day, those people are more likely to stick to their goals and to stick to their plans than the people who just jumped into a really intense program. They just weren't able to make it because they ended up getting burnt out or getting injured and then eventually quitting. There's another study in 2021, a study in sports medicine, where researchers tracked 1,200 adults for a year, and they found that those who increased exercise duration by just 10% weekly, okay, so they only brought up the amount of exercise that they were doing every week by about 10%, they had a 50% lower injury rate compared to those who rushed into, their progress basically. So slow and steady isn't just a cliche thing to say. It's actually it's survival. It works, right? So one of the biggest things in fat loss is that you don't want to get injured, because at the end of the day, fat loss is about thermodynamics and how much you're moving and how much you're eating. And so if you can't move because of an injury, then you're not going to be able to lose fat. You're not going to be able to be effective with your cardio strategy. So the reason why I say start small and start slow is because not only are you going to be more consistent with it, but you're also going to avoid any kind of injury, which is going to keep you moving for a longer period of time. And so obviously you're not injured. That helps you with your consistency in a long term. The last thing that I want to mention here is by Charles Duhigg, habit loop theory. What is that? Okay, so again, more science to back up these claims. Habits form through cue, routine, and reward cycle. So basically you have a cue, and then that cue reminds you that you need to do something. And so you have your routine that you go into. And then after that, after you do that activity, then you have a reward, right? And so there's something that cues you up, you do your activity, and then you have a reward for doing that activity. And basically, if you start small, for example, let's say you have breakfast, and then you say, I'm gonna go for a 10-minute walk after breakfast, right? That creates a sustainable cue to your brain that basically says, okay, now I have a little routine. Now I know that when I have breakfast, I can go for a 5 or a 10-minute walk. And that's just part of who I am and what I do, okay? And then over time, that builds momentum and consistency. And so again, you have your cue, which is having breakfast. And then you have the activity, which is you go for your walk. And then you have the reward, which is, oh, I feel good. I actually went for my walk and I got it done today, right? So again, you have to try to stack your habits and make sure that you attach 5 or 10 minutes here and there onto things that you already do, like brushing your teeth, like having breakfast, like having lunch, like having dinner. So if you can stack your habits like that, you're gonna be more likely to stick with them for a longer period of time. So what does that mean from a practical application, from an actual, what do I need to do every day? Well, I just gave you an example. You can go for a 5 or 10-minute walk after breakfast. I'm gonna mention another one of the strategies that kind of goes hand in hand with that and why it's beneficial to walk after meals that I'll get into in a second. The other thing is just do 10 minutes whenever you can. It doesn't have to be after a meal or after breakfast. It can be in between calls, in between meetings. If you work from home and you're on the computer all day, do 10 push-ups or get up and go for a walk and get some fresh air outside. That's gonna help clear your mind. It's gonna help you with mental health. If you can do it in nature, it's even better. The idea is get out and do these, what I call exercise snacks, 5 minutes, 10 minutes here and there. And next thing you know, they actually add up. And so again, you're starting small and you're building some consistency and you're building some habits that really aren't that hard to keep up with because they're just kind of attached to the things that you already do. Whether it's you have breakfast and then you go for a walk, or you finish a Zoom call and you go for a 5-minute, 10-minute walk. These are things that you just become accustomed to and that you just do throughout your regular routine and your regular day. I can tell you that when I started walking, because I was so heavy that I couldn't physically run, I started doing probably about 15 to 20 minutes every day. And then eventually I upped that to 30 minutes. And eventually in about a month or so, I was doing, 30 to 60 minutes every day. And it wasn't all at the same time, right? It was broken up into smaller pieces, which is the next part that I want to talk about. Strategy number 2. Strategy number 2 is break your cardio up into little mini sessions, like I just described. So I think that people think that if they don't do all of their cardio, they want to do an hour of cardio, let's say. And if they don't do it all at once, then it's not worth doing any of it. And so what happens is you're working, you have a family, you have other obligations throughout your day, and all of a sudden things get in the way, you're in traffic, you're on the way home, whatever the case is, life happens, and you don't have that hour that you wanted to dedicate to your cardio. So then all of a sudden you say, well, I can't do an hour, so I'm not gonna do anything. And that's where the problem comes in, because then you create this habit of, I'm not doing anything at all. Versus if you were to break your cardio sessions up into mini sessions, then you can say, I'm gonna go for a walk after this call. I already did a 10-minute walk after breakfast. I'm gonna do another 10-minute walk after dinner. All of a sudden you're able to fit it in and it's a lot more comfortable and you don't feel it as much. And if you are busy and you miss one of those 5 or 10-minute sessions, at least you did the other 5-minute session. So let's say you went for a walk after breakfast and you went for a walk after your Zoom call, and maybe you missed the one after dinner because something came up or you had to wash the dishes. At least you still got in the first 2. And so you see, it's all of a sudden not nothing that you're doing. At least you're doing something. And so that's why I think that these mini sessions and breaking everything up into mini sessions helps with consistency as well. Let me give you some research studies. In 2018, there was a study in obesity. Participants who did 3 10-minute cardio sessions daily lost 30% more fat. That's 30% more fat than those doing one 30-minute session. So not only is it better and more and easier to stay consistent with it, but it's actually more effective, okay? Why? It's the reason why is because these shorter bursts okay? They keep your metabolism kind of elevated longer, and they reduce these post-workout hunger strikes. And so I mentioned earlier that there's benefits to walking after a meal, even if it's like a 5 or a 10-minute walk. One of the main reasons why that is because another study in 2022, so this is a recent one, only 3 years ago, a study in diabetes care that said walking for just 10 to 15 minutes after meals, so directly after you have a meal, okay, lowered your blood sugar spikes by 30% in adults with prediabetes. So what does that mean? That means that you had a lower blood sugar spike after your meal just by going walking. What that means essentially is that you ate a meal, okay, the sugar went into your bloodstream, and instead of that sugar spiking in your bloodstream, you started walking, you started using your muscles. So your muscles started to pull that sugar out of the bloodstream and they started to use it. And so you don't get those energy highs and lows because your muscles are using that sugar and it's taking it out of your bloodstream. So you don't have that spike in blood sugar because your muscles are using it. You're walking, you're using that. And so that's one of the healthiest ways, or the easiest ways, to stay metabolically healthy, is to make sure that you don't have crazy up and down glucose spikes. This is huge because the study showed that stable blood sugar reduces fat storage and it reduces cravings. So both good things, right? You're reducing blood sugar spikes, you're reducing fat storage, and then, oh, by the way, you're reducing cravings. So just by going for a 10-minute walk after one of your meals. So I highly recommend all of the clients that I work with, if you can fit it in, get your walks in mini sessions. And if you could fit it in after a meal, even better, cherry on top, because then not only are you getting your walk in, but you're affecting your metabolism and your blood sugar spiking so that it doesn't spike too high. You're just kind of using that energy for your muscles, and it just kind of is overall healthier for your metabolism. So again, practical application here for strategy number 2. Basically, go for a 5 or 10-minute walk. Take the stairs after you have a meal. Go for a 10-minute walk after dinner, after breakfast, after lunch, after any meal that you have. If you can try to get some movement in, it doesn't have to be a walk. It could be anything else. It could be, some body weight squats. It can be anything, some jumping jacks. But whatever you do, these are just ways that you can incorporate cardio into your life where you don't have to feel like what everyone else thinks, which is I gotta go to the Stairmaster at the gym and I gotta hop on there for an hour and I gotta sweat until that 60 minutes is up and then I can go home and live the rest of my life. It doesn't have to be that way. You can split it up into smaller pieces. And again, science says it's actually even healthier to break it up into smaller pieces as opposed to just doing all of your cardio all at once. The third strategy is do cardio that you enjoy. So this is another thing. I actually enjoyed walking when I first started walking, and eventually I started running, and then I actually got into marathons, and I ran, ended up running 5 full marathons, number of half marathons, relay races. So running became kind of a part of who I was, and I made a lot of friends through running and running groups and so forth. So it just kind of became something that I really enjoyed. But it may not be running for you. It may be walking and going for a brisk walk just to kind of clear your head after a phone call or after dinner. Maybe you're with your partner and you want to take your dog out for a walk and you want to just clear your head, get some fresh air, walk in nature, walk by a park, whatever it is. Just do things that you enjoy. Maybe you don't like walking and you want to go for a bike ride, or you want to hop on your bike at home, your Peloton, or whatever it is. Find things that you enjoy. You could even have a little dance party if you have kids and they like it, and you put some fun music on and have a little dance party. The idea is, if you can find ways to do cardio that you actually enjoy, then guess what? You're more likely to do it. And that leads to better consistency, and that leads to long-term results. And so here are some studies. 2020 study in psychology of sport and exercises. Researchers followed 500 people for a year and found that those who enjoyed their workouts exercised 75% more often than those who didn't. That's a huge difference. 75% increase in the amount of time that they worked out just because they enjoyed the cardio that they were doing. So enjoyment wasn't a bonus. It was basically the key to consistency. So again, find things that you enjoy. Another study, Dopamine and perceived effort. This is a study out of Frontiers in Psychology from 2018. So another recent study. Fun activities like dancing or hiking trigger dopamine release. Dopamine release basically means that it's something that makes you feel good. Basically what that did is if you feel good while you're doing something, it kind of lowers the perceived effort. So you don't feel like you're working as hard. Think about if you go for a walk and you're very distracted. I remember when I used to live in a big city and I would go walking, down Chicago. I used to live in Chicago. And I remember being so distracted by the buildings and looking around and the people. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I just did 20 minutes of walking and I don't know where the time went because I was distracted. And so the perceived effort was a lot lower than if I just hop on a treadmill and I'm staring at a screen and I'm just kind of walking there and walking and monotonous, right? When I used to train for marathons, I hated running on treadmills because I wanted to run outside to be distracted because I felt like the time and the distance went by a lot quicker. So it's not only me thinking that, it's science, right? Another study here, self-determination theory. This talks about when workouts align with your interests, basically, when you're doing something that you enjoy, and that it also aligns with your strengths. So like if you're a good biker or if you are a good runner or if you really do like walking, right? You're more likely to stick to that. This is from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology back in the year 2000. So a little older of a study, but still, it's just basically showing you that science has proven that if you do something that you enjoy, if you do something that you're good at and that you like, then you're more likely to stick to it and you're more likely to continue to do it for a long period of time. Again, consistency, sticking to it, long-term results. So what does that mean from a practical application standpoint, right? Because I want to give you some actionable tips. Every time I give you a strategy, I want to tell you how you can incorporate it into your life. So again, things like dance cardio, hiking, kickboxing, anything that you enjoy, going for a bike ride, riding your, I guess a skateboard wouldn't be that much cardio because you're just kind of kicking, but anything that you really enjoy. You see all these funny kinds of cardio types of things, like people laying down on a bike or people on a regular bike or people rollerblading, right? Anything that you enjoy. Who cares? Go back to your childhood and think about the things that you enjoyed when you were young and do that stuff, right? Be a kid again, enjoy it. And then when you enjoy it, you're going to get movement in naturally, you're going to enjoy it and you're not going to feel like it's a chore. And you're just going to incorporate it into your day because it's something that brings you happiness. Again, it increases those dopamine levels. And you don't feel like you're doing a lot of work per se. I know clients that have basically said, you know what, I don't want to go for a walk, but I like Zumba or I like yoga or I like this salsa dance class. Like my mom now takes dance classes. They're basically at the gym and they're moving around constantly, right? So they're dancing, but they're moving. So it is cardio. It's just a different form of cardio and it works because if you tell her go walk around the block for an hour or for 30 minutes, that's not as exciting and she's not likely to do that. But if you say go with your friends to this class and dance around for an hour, she's gonna like that. It's social interaction, right? You're with other people, you're laughing, you're moving around, and it's just a more of a feel-good activity that you're gonna continue to do and you're actually gonna look forward to. All right, so I told you that I would give you 2 tips that you can stack onto these 3 strategies. But first, let's review these strategies so that we can really kind of remind ourselves of what we're talking about here. So the first one is start slow and start small. Don't try to take on too much because you're not going to be able to do it. You might get injured. You might just quit. You might burn out, right? So start slow and start small. The other thing is break these cardio sessions down into mini sessions. Don't feel like you have to do an hour all at once. You don't have to do an hour all at once. You can break them up into mini sessions, and science shows that if you can do these after meals, it's even more effective. And then the third one is do stuff that you enjoy. Do the cardio that you like. Go dancing, go hiking, ride your bike. Go for a nice brisk walk in nature and use it as almost like a mental health thing to clear your mind, right? Take a phone call, listen to a podcast. I love listening to podcasts or books while I go for a walk because I'm learning, I'm doing some self-development and some personal care stuff. And at the same time, I'm getting some exercise and I'm walking. Sometimes when I'm on a call with a client, I'll hop on the treadmill and I'll do that. And I'll just get my exercise in while I'm talking to a client. So these are all ways that you can incorporate that. Now, the 2 tips that I wanted to tell you were, number 1, pair your cardio with protein. So there's another study back in 2020, a study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. And it found that combining cardio with 20 to 30 grams of protein, okay, post-workout, what that did is if you got 20 to 30 grams after your workout of protein, it preserves muscle mass, which keeps your metabolism running faster. So basically, your idea is you want to lose fat, you don't want to lose muscle. So as you lose weight, you want most of that weight to come from fat and not muscle. One of the ways that you can do that is by pairing your cardio with enough protein. 20 to 30 grams after your walk or after your dance session or whatever. Get a little bit of protein in so that you make sure that the weight that you are losing is not coming from muscle, it's only coming from fat. And then tip number 2, avoid overtraining. Another study back in 2017, a study in the Journal of Endocrinology showed that overtraining raises cortisol. Cortisol is the hormone that we get when we're really stressed out, right? That cortisol hormone increases and it raised it, which basically means more belly fat storage. So storage in the midsection area. If you've ever been chronically stressed, and I had this back in 2015, years ago, I can go into that in another video, but I remember being chronically stressed and I had elevated levels of cortisol at the times of the day, which I should not have elevated levels, because cortisol is good. Cortisol wakes you up in the morning. It's what gets you up out of bed in the morning. So you have to have high cortisol in different parts of the day. But if it's constantly elevated, or if it's elevated at night because you're overtraining and then you're trying to go to sleep, that's not good because you're not going to be able to sleep and it's going to affect a lot of different things. Okay, so you have to keep in mind that you could overtrain, and that's what happens with a lot of people that think that they have to go to the gym and do an hour of treadmill or an hour of elliptical Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then they're like, well, I'm moving so much and I'm doing so much cardio, but I'm not losing weight. It's because your hormones are out of whack because you're overtraining. Okay, so 2 tips. Number 1, pair your cardio with proteins to make sure that you don't lose any muscle. And then number 2, make sure that you do not overtrain. So make sure, again, small mini bursts of cardio here and there, but you don't have to do it all at once and you don't have to worry about overtraining and keeping your hormone levels in a healthy place. All right, so there we are. 3 strategies that I used to personally lose over 125 pounds and, more importantly, to keep it off for over 20 years. I lost my weight in the year 2002 and we're in 2025. So that's what, almost 23 years now. So it's been a long time and I've used these strategies all my life, because why go and do an hour on a treadmill if you hate the treadmill? Why go and do an hour walk if you don't have time to do the hour walking, right? Break it up into 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes here and there. Go out with your partner, with your wife, with your husband, with your kid, right? Start to establish some healthy habits with your family. Do it together. Find walking, as a time where you can maybe disconnect and leave your phones behind and say, hey, family, let's go for a walk and let's talk about our day, right? After dinner maybe or something. These are different ways that you can incorporate healthy movement into your life without having to feel like you have to go to some treadmill on some machine and just hop on there for 60 minutes and sweat it out like everybody else does. There's a reason why most people lose weight but then gain it back. It's because they don't know about these strategies. They're not implementing these strategies. If this was helpful, please give it a like so that more people find it. Please subscribe to the channel. I have a specific goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers around April or May of this year in 2025. So it would mean the world to me if you found value from this to please subscribe to the channel. I try to put out one of these videos every single week. And then I have a lot of different resources, free resources. I do coaching. And if you want to learn more about coaching, I have a video on that, on how my coaching works, as well as you can book a free call with me if you want to get into more details. But I do have a number of free resources. They're linked down in the description. I have a Saturday morning newsletter that goes out. You just got to go to mindset.eddieroselle.com and it's absolutely free. On top of that, when you sign up for that for free, I'm going to send you my free nutrition ebook. It's kind of like a cheat sheet, things that I give my clients and that I tell my clients about in terms of the nutrition side of things. And then I also have a sleep guide that you can check out in the description below. There's a link to my free sleep guide. So again, all you need to do is put your email in there. And then the worst case scenario is you're going to get an email from me every Saturday morning that gives you some really cool tips on my experience and what I think people should focus on, and different tips and tricks on mindset, on weight loss, on health, on fitness, and on overall lifestyle. Because I think that when you want to be fit and you want to be healthy, it's not just what you do, it's really just a lifestyle. It's who you become, it's your identity. Again, if you like this video, please subscribe so that I can continue to bring information to you. Turn on notifications if you want to know about when I release new videos, and I'll see you on the next one. And if you want to see one of my other videos, it should pop up on either side here. See ya.